he's putting everything together, so without further ado, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me. Again, my name is Ron Melton, and I work in the city treasurer's office. I was born and raised here in Portsmouth. I went to high school, Wilson High School. My friend Jim started in here. We go all the way back to elementary school over here at Hodges Manor Elementary. He's also my treasurer for my campaign. I started out in accounts receivable management at Portsmouth General Hospital. I have over a decade of experience in the treasurer's office. I'm a master governmental deputy treasurer. I have that certification through University of Virginia, Cooper Weldon Center of Continuing Studies. I also am involved right now in the second part of a three-part governmental accounting certification through Radford University. I'll be going to Richmond on the 22nd to take that second part exam. I have the endorsement as running for treasurer. I have the endorsement of the treasurer, the incumbent, Mr. James Whitnams, who's been in the office for 24 years and is heading for a well-deserved retirement at the end of this year. The three main functions in the treasurer's office is that we collect the tax, we disperse the funds, and we invest the excess revenues. Now, to talk about the budget, the tax revenue is the largest portion of the budget. Of the $652 million operating budget, tax revenue is $166 million of that budget. And that's through real estate tax, which is approximately $92 million, personal property tax, which is approximately $24 million, and other local taxes, approximately $30 million, to include cigarette tax, food tax, amusement tax, etc. In 2016, our collection ratio for real estate tax was 99%. Our personal property tax ratio of return was 96%. We send out approximately 68,000 bills this year. I'm sure everybody here had to pay their taxes last Monday, right?
Yes, we did.
June the 5th, which was a rainy day. Anyway, we sent out 68,000 bills, and on those bills, we billed approximately 98,000 items, to include cars, boats, campers, trailers. And my responsibility right now is that I am the supervisor of the personal property tax department within the treasurer's office. So this past week has been pretty hectic for us. I want to talk a little bit about the tax relief that we offer, which some of you may benefit from this, as far as your parents perhaps, or if you're over 65 years of age and you make less than $30,000 and you have assets less than $75,000, you could qualify for tax relief on your real estate bill, your real estate taxes. This is administered through social services. So if you know of someone that might qualify for this program, you have to apply by April the 30th of that year that you want to reap the benefit. We also offer now military, a benefit to military. If you're 100% disabled through active duty, you don't have to pay personal property tax on your primary vehicle. So let's say you have a nice car and a not so nice car where your taxes are high, you're going to use the higher priced car to take the advantage of not paying the tax on that car. Again, military, 100% permanently disabled while on active duty. And that's administered through the Commissioner of Revenue's office, by the way. There are 3 improvements that I would like to see if I'm elected treasurer. We have a satellite office right now in Churchland. You may be familiar with that, at the Churchland Library. It's a small office, and it's attached to the library there. I'd like to see a second satellite office at the Victory Crossing area. We used to have one there in the old Tower Mall. You familiar with that? No problem. And so I'd like to see us put back another second satellite office, because it would be convenient for those people that live in this area, as well as Cavalier Manor, Simonsdale, Hodges Manor, Hyden Biltmore areas. I can see, hopefully, have the Commissioner of Revenue in that office as well, so that they could offer the DMV select services that we offer downtown, but don't offer in the Churchland office because of the size constraints. It's so small there. We can only get 5 people in the waiting area. And last Monday, when it was raining, people were standing outside. If they didn't have an umbrella, they were soaked. So I'd like to see that happen. I'd also like to see, and what we're going to do is an electronic billing system for the personal property tax. We have that for real estate. It's on the Portsmouth website, but the personal property, you can't access that electronically. We're going to have a new mailing service, and what we're going to do there is we want to send out a flyer to those people who have email addresses, excuse me, and get those back so that we can have you access the system by your email address and a password that you would choose, so that you'll be able to see your personal property tax online, and then have a link to the payment, the online payment system, so that you will be able to do that rather than pay through the mail or wait for the paper bill to come to you. Thirdly, and this is an emotional issue that people have difficulty with, some people, and that's our distress collection area, which I'm in charge of that. I'm the guy that sends the file every morning to the company that puts the boots on cars. I'm not saying anybody here has been a delinquent taxpayer, but you may know someone who has been. And this is a very, like I said, emotional issue. We indiscriminately boot cars based on license plate number. I send the license plates every morning on those delinquent accounts. And we have every situation you can imagine where we've had elderly people with oxygen bottles get booted. We've had young mothers with infant children get booted in the Walmart parking lots. We've had students get booted at Tidewater Community College. I want to do away with the boot. There's another way to do this. I mean, our distress collection activities progress from penalty and the interest going on immediately after the due date of June 5, all the way up to seizure of vehicle. In between, we will do wage liens, we will do DMV blocks, which means you can't re-register your car until you pay your taxes, and also putting a claim against your state income tax refund. So what I would propose is to do away with the boot portion of the seizure, where we would, instead of going out and scanning the license plates and putting the physical boot on the tire, I would like to see that we go out and put a sticker on the window and say, hey, you've got tax issues, you better come to the tax office to take care of this immediately, or we will seize your vehicle. Give them the opportunity to get off that parking lot. Too often we have booted these cars in these parking lots, and after 6 p.m., they'll get towed. We don't leave them in public parking lots. If you're in your driveway, we'll leave them for 3 days, but you have the opportunity now with the sticker on the window. My proposal, get that car home, come see us, make some payment arrangements, take care of these taxes, or, well, I have your VIN number, I have your license plate number through the DMV. I can come get that car if I want it and have it impounded. I'm trying to give you an opportunity to get off that parking lot, get home. Let's get some arrangements made there. Lastly, I would like to say to you, because I'm not a politician, I'm a nuts and bolts finance guy. When you go to the polling booth and you vote, you're actually hiring the person for the job of treasurer. And when you do this, you want to hire the most qualified candidate. And I believe that person is me. I want to thank you for your time this morning. And if you have any questions about your own personal taxes or anything else, I'll be glad to answer it for you. Okay? Thank you again.
Questions? We've got questions. I'll hold mine up. Mark?
Sir, there's another candidate in the race who, when asked about the relative qualifications of himself and yourself, made a statement to the effect that just because somebody can drive the ship doesn't mean they can command the ship. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, I believe that if you're going to be on the ship, you better know how to drive a ship, you know. I feel like experience, qualifications, and education, those three things right there are what I bring to the table. Ask your other candidates, what do they bring to the table? I mean, they may be able to drive, I don't know that they can drive the ship, actually. This is not a political position. I don't understand why the treasurer's position has become so politicized. When the treasurer, Jim Williams, leaves office December 31st, and if I were to take office January 1st, it's going to be a smooth transition. There'll be no learning curve for me. Someone else comes in there, it's going to take a minimum 2 years for them to get up to speed and figure out what's going on. We have, again, like I said, we collect the tax, we disperse the funds, and the investment portion of this is a big deal because we deal with banks, and we're talking about having to have a minimum amount of $85 million in the account at any given day for operation, and then we have a sweep account. I mean, I can get into a lot of detail here, which they can't do this. So driving the boat, being a crew member on the boat, well, I think it's if you liken it to the Titanic, the captain should have been on the bridge. Sir, yes, sir.
To your point, because with the last Commonwealth's attorney who took over, there were a lot of attorneys who were arbitrarily replaced. When you take over, do you intend to replace anybody arbitrarily?
No, sir. I have worked with these people from day one, since I've been there, over 10 years. We have a good staff in place. The number one, our number one criteria, and our incumbent right now says that our number one priority is customer satisfaction. We have a great staff, and I have no intention of replacing anyone. There may be some movement within the office because I haven't been there 10 years. You know, I see areas that need to be improved and where some people would do better in other areas in the office, but I have no intention of replacing anyone. We've had these talks in the office already, and I have no intention of replacing anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the total amount of your employment in your departments? Employees?
We're right at 25. That's counting the satellite office.
25?
Yeah, we have 3 people out at Churchland, and then we have 2. Sometimes we'll take a third, but we have 2 there. Full-time 2 there, and then we have 20 on staff. 22 people, counting the treasurer himself. So we're right at the 24 mark, somewhere like that.
And as compared to other cities, that is a sufficient amount of employees. You wouldn't increase when you come
Well,
in, you would just keep it there.
As I said, for the satellite office out here, we would have to
Okay.
increase. We'd have to have 2 or 3 more people there, plus the commissioner's side of it. But I could use some more people downtown in the personal property area because, well, it gets heavy, but we have 7 cashier windows up. Have you been to the city?
Yes,
You've seen it.
yes.
We have 7 cashier windows up front so that we man those where we have to pull people from the back. But everyone is cross-trained in the office, so everybody can do a multitude of things when called upon. You can cashier, or you can be personal property, or you can handle real estate or food tax. So it's a good flow. We have a good staff, and yeah, about 20,
Thank you.
25 people.
Dolores, you had a question?
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
well, I just want to make a statement. If you do a job long enough, you just know it by grace, and you know what to do when and where. A lot of those girls have been there for a long, long time. And someone goes in new, they're gonna be scratching their head and lose their hair, because it's more to that department than people think. Because I worked in Commissioner Revenue's office, I
Right.
know how much,
Right.
what a
They-
lot of that stuff
yeah.
goes on.
We've had people come in and after about 2 weeks, they're gone. It's hard to explain to someone who's applying for the job all that it entails. We try to say, look, first of all, you have to be calm. You can't get frazzled there, because we're dealing with taxpayers. Most of the time, I've always said, if you walk through my door, you have an issue. You're not coming there just to say good morning. You are behind the 8 ball on your taxes somehow. And I've always said to people when they come in and they're sitting with me, I have said, it's not my job to make you happy, but it's my job to make you understand your tax situation. And with that, I probably have about a 99.99% ratio of satisfied people leaving my office. I get a lot of hugs. So, yes, ma'am.
Other times they have come over to our department, your department first, and then come over to ours. They're mad when they come to our department because they don't have the car anymore. They got rid of the car.
That's
And
right.
then they go over there, you must have waited just to bring them to our department.
Mhm.
And it's not as simple as it sounds. It really isn't. People get mad. We had a guy knock a hole through the wall one time because he didn't get his way. He couldn't see the DMV printout.
There's a question here, Tom?
I'm sorry.
Concerning the third satellite office, I agree that would be more convenient, but do you have any figures on how much that would cost? and new employees and-
I don't.
Would it help delinquencies any, to make it more convenient? Would it help your delinquency rate? I assume there is a delinquency rate.
There is, and what I'm looking at mainly is the convenience to the taxpayer. As you know, Portsmouth's population is on the backside of 45. So we have an elderly population, and I want to take the taxes to the people rather than bring the people to the taxes. It's hard for people sometimes to. On June the 5th, downtown City Hall, first floor, we had a line that wrapped from my front door all the way around the lobby and back
I was
down
in
to
that
the
line.
front of the building, right by the Commissioner of Revenue's window. I've never seen it so long.
Oh, I was in the line.
And you were in the line. So I need to break, and people standing in the rain in church. Well, I'll tell you one thing, I want to put an awning out over the sidewalk so that they don't stand in the rain or the heat. Last year I was out there and it was 95 degrees and it's terrible. But to bring the convenience of the office to, say, Victory Crossing would help tremendously for those people who have to come all the way downtown from out here. Logistically speaking, I think it just makes sense, but handle the delinquency portion of it. It would help because a lot of people who we get a lot of calls. And the main call that we get is, I don't own the vehicle, or I didn't get my bill. Every day. I didn't get my bill. My dog ate the bill. My dog ate my, so. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm
No,
not over
you're
time.
very good. As a
I could
matter-
go on and on.
Yes, you could, and here's something that seriously, nobody even addresses. You actually invest our money. And I would like to call him back on that
We
topic,
do.
special topic. How
Very.
is he, because if he doesn't invest well, we can't pay our bills. So if you're a great investor, which I'd like to know what you're investing in too.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a new fund that's been offered to us through the Virginia Treasury Department. It's called the Local Government Investment Pool, LPIG. and it's an overnight rate, and right now it's 0.999%. So it's a pretty good flow for us to take what I call the sweep account money and move it into there, get an overnight rate, and then move it back. So we're moving money back and forth in the investment area. So
Isn't that,
it's
do you declare that in the budget, by the way, when you come out? Because I know there's a portion of investment. Do you give the rates of how the money's?
no,
It's not declared out there?
No, we don't.
Okay. I just think if you
Sure.
all agree, that would be awesome to see how he's investing our money.
I can come back at another time, and we can specifically talk about investments at that time. I just wanted to really give you an overview right now of our budgeting, how our money gets into the budget. Again, the largest portion of revenue for the city of Portsmouth, and probably any city, taxes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And your Facebook address is what? What's your Facebook?
Yes,
website?
Ron S. Melton, Portsmouth City Treasurer.
I've already looked at it. It's pretty decent for Facebook. He's getting his website up soon.
Yeah, that's
I'll
good.
be on the bill, right?
Thank you. Our next guest speaker, TJ Wright, is running for Commonwealth Attorney. I think this is a very important position. It's been in the news quite a bit recently. I've asked TJ to come forward. Again, we are the Taxpayer Alliance. Are you going to increase your office size, decrease? Just very quickly on that. And I do know you have talking points. It's good. TJ also has a very good website, by the way. Go on, take a look. His points are out there as well.
Great, thank you. My grandfather, who's from Portsmouth, he always had good one-liners and lessons in life, many of which had to do with eating, drinking water, and going to the bathroom. But one of the things that he usually said to me was, tell him what you're going to tell him, and then tell him what you told him. So what am I going to talk about today? First, I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about myself, tell a little bit about my family and how I'm connected to Portsmouth. Then I'm going to tell you about what the current office does, not necessarily with regard to the incumbent, but just the office of the Commonwealth, where they get their funding from, and also what are other responsibilities that aren't usually commonly associated with that office. And then we'll wrap it up, and hopefully I can dovetail some of my talking points into the end. All right, so who am I? I'm a graduate of the University of Miami. I did not grow up in Portsmouth. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. My father went to Churchland High School, but when my parents separated, I grew up in South Florida. I entered the Marine Corps in 2000, January 4th of 2000. I enlisted. After a couple of years as an enlisted man, I had the opportunity to go to officer candidate school. I did that. I had the opportunity to fly. I did that. I ended my career as the backseater in the F-18, which is the jets that fly out of Oceana. My last 2 years, the military is actually what brought me back to Portsmouth. They said, we're going to take you to Virginia, and I told the military, which worked out in my favor. I said, you give me any job that you can, just put me in Hampton Roads. I was able to move within a mile of 2 sets of aunts and uncles and my grandfather, who was alive at the time. And when I got out, my wife and I had a discussion. My wife is from Boston, and we decided to make Portsmouth our home. My oldest daughter was born in Portsmouth Naval Hospital, and both of my children and my wife and I, we reside here and we live in Glenchila. All right. What is my experience with regard to being an attorney? Right when I got out of the military, I went straight into law school. I took about 2 weeks off. I was probably about 10, 15 years senior to most of my colleagues in law school. Law school is typically a 3-year program. I graduated in just a little over 2 years, which is not necessarily common. Passed the bar exam on the first try, and I worked my last year in law school with the Commonwealth's attorney under Earl Mobley at the time. Once that was done, I decided I need for my family to go out into private practice, as I thought that might be better for my family and allow me to get more experience in a shorter amount of time. I worked for Sonny Stallings, who was a legislator here in Virginia for some time, and then shortly after being there for about a year, I went out on my own. I've had my own law practice since 2014, and now I'm here before you. All right. So what does the Commonwealth's attorney do? I think the thing that's most commonly associated with it is that they prosecute crimes. They prosecute misdemeanors and they prosecute felonies. But what other people don't, what we don't realize is that the Commonwealth Attorney's Office is also responsible for collection of delinquent fines, costs, forfeitures, and restitution. So if a crime is committed and something is damaged, many times the court will order restitution, meaning that the defendant will have to pay back whoever the victim is based on whatever the damages were. Now there's a couple ways that that can be collected. One is it can be collected through the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office themselves. They can act as a collection agent and either bring a civil suit or other proceedings in order to recover those fines and costs. Other ways that they can do it, if the Commonwealth's attorney elects not to do that, they can utilize private attorneys, they can utilize a collection agency, they can use other local governmental bodies, the city treasurer, or the Department of Taxation. Currently, it's my understanding that we're utilizing private counsel in order to do that. Okay, so as the Taxpayer Alliance, how does that affect us financially? Well, anytime you use a private attorney in order to collect these debts, for lack of a better term, those are collected on a contingency basis, meaning that that private attorney is going to be paid for his time and effort in doing that. Usually it's on a percentage basis. Usually that percentage basis is based on how far do they have to go in the collection of those debts. So for example, if the debt is collected with just merely a phone call or a letter, it would be on a lower percentage basis. But if you actually have to bring that person to court, you pay for that time and you pay on a higher basis there. What's the problem here? That's your money. We're hiring out something for other people to do. And this isn't, it's not easy, but it's not brain surgery in order to bring these things through. There's a couple ways that I would propose that we do this in a better light. The current office is staffed with attorneys with a tremendous amount of experience from different fields, not necessarily in career prosecutors, but we have many people that have come from the civil side. Many people that have come in filing those warrants in debt, which is essentially a collection, a suit for collection. We could be handling that in office right now. The other option is to work with the department, the treasurer here in the city. That's already one of the primary duties that that office holds. Again, that would not come at a cost to the city or to the Commonwealth's attorney at that point. So those are direct funds that basically we're losing out on at this point. All right, so how does the budget work with regard to the Commonwealth's attorney's office? The Commonwealth's attorney and the attorneys within the office are primarily funded through the state compensation board, meaning that that doesn't come directly out of the city's budget. The primary focus that we have, the primary expenses or the things that's the cost to the city are going to be what's classified as, I believe, state shared expenses. So those are going to be things like our personnel, so like our receptionist, paralegals, things of that nature, other sort of operating costs like dues for professional organization, training, travel, things like that, things that the compensation board wouldn't otherwise pay for. So that's kind of a big thing to understand when we talk about moving into that office and kind of how that budget is going to affect us as taxpayers, is what are we really talking about in managing that office. What I typically don't talk about in my campaign is what did I do before I was in the military. Well, when I graduated with a finance degree, okay, so I have a background in business. And not only that, I was a credit analyst for an international bank for 2 years out of college. So I understand what it means to work with a budget. I understand what it also means to read a balance sheet and how those things operate. Okay. So when we go into this, let's talk about how we manage the expenses, because really it's not the Commonwealth's attorney's money, it's their budget, but it's your money. It's the taxpayers' money, it's the citizens' money. In 2016, it was reported in the city's budget for 2018 that there was a travel expense of $16,000 approximately from that office. The budget, what was budgeted for that year was $5,000. So it was an overspenditure of $11,000. Okay, there was an expense of food and subsistence or something of such of $5,700. You know what was budgeted for that? Zero. It's almost $6,000 that came at the cost of the taxpayers. There's a cell phone expenditure of $14,000, which was budgeted of $12,000. I mean, that's a fixed cost. I don't understand how we go over by $2,000 for something that generally is a fixed cost. So what are we talking right there? Just those three things alone for financial year 2016, that's an over expenditure of $18,000 to $19,000. And that's essentially a part-time salaried position. That's important. That's important to recognize there. For this year, how is the city done with regard to these state shared expenses? Well, the first thing to know is as we go in there, we have a 3% decrease. Not an enormous decrease, but it is a decrease nonetheless. And what does that mean from specific funds? It goes from $1.6 million down to $1.57 million. Okay? So though it's 3%, that's a significant amount of money when we're talking. We're talking roughly about $40,000-ish. Again, that's a full-time salary position right there that essentially we lose that money. Now that doesn't come directly out of salaries, but it's just nice to know the numbers as you walk into these things. The goods with regard to the financial year 2018 budget is that they've allotted for one extra full-time position, so from 32 to 33 staff. Okay, so how am I going to manage that, and how does that work with regard to my platform? As I started this, my speech today, or my talk, is that I'm a Marine, and pretty much the Marine motto is we do more with less. So am I going to make a blanket statement that I'm going to go into this office and I'm going to go ahead and start slashing and cutting positions and things like that? Absolutely not. That would be irresponsible, and quite honestly, I don't think that anybody really is expecting that to happen. The first thing that we need to do is we need to do a comprehensive audit as to kind of where these expenses are going and how we've been making these expenses. I'm more concerned about who we have doing the job and how they're doing the job. Because quite honestly, if we have two people doing the job of one person, I think that speaks for itself, and we can solve that solution very quickly. When we talk about we're only going to order these many reams of paper and things like that, those come with the work. It's really, I'm more concerned, the biggest expenditure that any operation will have, whether it be a private entity or a governmental entity, is your salaries and your people. So I'm more concerned with the people and what are they doing. So how does that work into with my platform and my campaign with regard to making Portsmouth safer? Community outreach. One of the first things I want to know, and one of the first things that's indicated on the budget as to what the Commonwealth's attorneys do, is that they're assigned to these civic leagues. I've been to a number of civic leagues, and I have yet to see a Commonwealth's attorney, the Commonwealth's attorney, or an assistant Commonwealth's attorney, or a senior assistant Commonwealth's attorney, or a deputy at any of these civic league meetings. So where are they doing, what are they doing, and where are they doing it? Am I saying that it's not happening at all? No, not at all. But my experience and my discussion with citizens is that they are not having the community outreach that really is being put forth from that office currently. So how does that help us? Well, one, in the news, and it's probably most important to talk about relative events and things that are happening right now. We've had two shootings and killings within the last 48 to 72 hours. The Chief Chapman, has a community outreach program where they walk neighborhoods after the fact. The reason for that is twofold. One is to allow the citizens because it's not just the person that was injured, it's the community as a whole that is a victim there. So it allows them to get some sort of comfort, some security within their home that, all right, there is a presence here, this isn't something that's going to be ongoing. But the second part of that is not only do they feel comfortable with the law enforcement officers there, but they feel comfortable enough that they can help in the investigation and things like that. One of the things that we have a problem with right now in gathering information with crimes is that the community is afraid to participate. Why is the community afraid to participate? I think that that's come with the disconnect between the two offices, with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office and law enforcement. They can't operate against each other. They have to be one team. Now, does that mean that law enforcement is infallible and that they don't do things wrong? Absolutely not. But they need to be integrated with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office so that they can work with each other and they can move forward and they can work for the community as a whole. you can't find things that are wrong with the other side unless you are standing next to the other side. So if there's an officer that is doing something incorrectly, you correct that issue, and if you need to, you document it, and then if it needs to go further, you work to have that person terminated or basically taken away from that position. It needs to be a systematic process, and the only way that we can do that is if we have a good relationship with both sides. So how does that help us from a financial aspect? Well, we're getting out there, we're solving crimes, and that we don't have basically the expenses of the extra effort that we need to do because we're working well with each other. All right. What are some other things? One of the big platforms that I have right now, one of the missions that I want to solve is gang violence and drugs. You have two issues with regard to those. You have the supplier and you have the demand. So you have the drug dealer and you have the addict. I'm concerned with the addicts, but I'm more concerned with the drug dealers. All right, how do we do this with a cost-effective basis? Well, really, if we were to look at the addicts, we need to get the federal agencies involved with regard to that. Because right now what happens when somebody's convicted of a crime, if we convict him within the state legal system, what happens is they typically will either go to Portsmouth City Jail or they'll go to Hampton Roads Regional Jail, depending on what the crime is. And then if they're put into the state system, then they're put somewhere else within the state. They do it for a number of time. They stay within the same criminal community that they're used to being in. Is a punishment? Absolutely. But is it something that deters crime? I don't know. If we get the federal law enforcement involved with these things and we prosecute people on the federal side, one, we ease the burden on our court system. Two, we work with community relations with federal law enforcement and with the prosecutors on the federal side. Once those people are convicted and they are sentenced to prison, they don't necessarily stay in Virginia. They're taken out to Montana. They're taken out to Idaho, Ohio, wherever. They're put anywhere within that federal Department of Corrections. That's a deterrent. When you know that mom and dad aren't going to come see you every weekend or every visitation, and that basically it may be one time a year because they have to travel all the way to wherever this federal institution is, that's a deterrent. That's something that I think would shake people at their core. And not only that, I think that would be incentive for people to talk about other things that are going on. Because the way that you historically have reduced your sentence and worked with law enforcement is you snitch or flip or you aid in prosecution of other people. And that way we use one person to get to three. We can reduce the supply, and then now what we can do is we can focus more on the demand. What do we do with the addict? I think there needs to be more of a holistic approach when we talk about dealing with addiction. Is it a crime to have an opiate? Absolutely. Is it a victimless crime? No. So how do we deal with that? We have the drug court here in Portsmouth. That's been a fairly effective system that we've used. What that is basically we give this person the opportunity to kind of redeem themselves, to get back to normal so that they can get employment, so they can get clean, things like that. That's, I think, what we want as a city as a whole. I don't think just taking people directly off the street, putting them away, is the answer, because at some point that person's going to come back. So if we can make it so that he comes back and he is a productive member of society, that makes us as Portsmouth a better system. So what do we talk about? Who I am, we talked about what the budget is, we talked about what we're doing with regard to spending, how we can save ourselves some money and quite honestly make some money for the city with regard to recovering those fines. How are we going to dovetail that into gang relations and prosecution? And then quite honestly, I think we, as Portsmouth as a whole, I think we deserve better. And I think the way that we do that is we work harder and smarter. So, what questions do you have?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe clarification. And my question is, which is interesting, you're not shifting the cost, but you are shifting the cost by bringing in the federal government. Who would make that decision if this goes to the federal? Do they get involved in the very arrest portion? Or does the judges get involved and say this will go to federal court? Because then we have a long wait period. So you would make the decision coming from your department?
Absolutely. So let me address that, one with how does it actually work, and then what would we do to make it work, okay? So judges don't get involved until law enforcement or the office gets them involved. So people don't go before the judge unless a motion is made, somebody's indicted, things of that nature. So the judges don't make that decision. So we back that up to the investigative standpoint and what's going on. So we have a gang task force here within the police department, okay? And what they do is they monitor gangs, and typically there's the two big gangs that we have here, the Bloods and the Crips, and I think nationally are recognized. They can get those agencies involved when it gets to a certain level, and that's how they get involved. What we have historically, at least when Earl Mobley was running that office, is we had an attorney that was a liaison within the federal prosecution side. So we would have somebody that would be there that would be a direct feed to that portion. So they can work with the U.S. Marshals, they can work with not only the Department of Justice, but they can work with the FBI, DEA, things of that nature. So we still maintain control of the prosecution to some extent, but the biggest thing is that we have somebody there that can be an advocate for Portsmouth, that can be an advocate for our criminal justice
Does
system.
that person still exist, that liaison?
We, the last person that I know that held that position was a woman by the name of Amy Cross, who coincidentally, when the current Commonwealth attorney was elected, is no longer at that position. I don't think we've staffed that since. I don't know that definitively, but I practice in Portsmouth regularly, and I have never heard of that position, somebody holding that position at this time. And the other thing that's important about that is that's typically a senior position, because you're dealing with prosecuting things on the federal level. So you said it may take more time. The Eastern District of Virginia is commonly referred to nationally as the rocket docket. So they push cases through the Eastern District of Virginia. Oh yeah. They're probably the fastest federal district court court. Does that answer your question? I think to
Yes,
some
yes it
extent?
does, yes it does, thank you.
Yes, sir.
What determines where you go to jail, whether the downtown jail or the Hampton Roads jail? What crime determines?
So generally what happens is when somebody's convicted of a crime, then they get passed over to the DOJ and they go over to the Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department will coordinate with DOJ as to where they go. That's the kind of the big picture thing. A lot of times what will determine it is going to be the nature of the crime, if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, and then if it's a felony, what level of a felony is it? I mean, because typically you wouldn't put somebody that committed grand larceny in with somebody that committed murder. Generally they're housed at different facilities based on the level of the offense. But once they leave the courthouse, then they become a ward, for lack of a better term, of DOJ.
We have other questions. Bill
Yes, sir.
first, then
Didn't
next.
you work with the Commonwealth attorney on Earl Mobley for a while?
Yes, sir. I did for the last year of my law school career.
And did you want to mention anything about?
Oh, that's right, yeah. I was gonna finish up with that. I do have my campaign kickoff, which is gonna be the 21st of June at 5:30. It's at Mario's in Midtown off of Airline. Everybody is welcome there. It is a come one, come all. I would ask that you would either shoot me a message via the website that's provided on the invitation, or on my, I'm assuming the email or my website, or some other form or fashion, just so that we can get good numbers so we can accommodate everybody.
We do have another question.
Your private practice.
Yes, sir.
What do you focus on? Criminal defense?
Criminal defense, and I do family law. So one of the things that's my passion is juveniles. So I deal a lot with the juvenile court, and I think it's probably a better topic for another discussion, but I think more focus on the juvenile system will help us. It will pay dividends further on down the road. I don't think we have very good ways to deter juveniles or have other programs and things like that, but that's kind of what my practice here is.
You mentioned you were gonna deal with the drug dealers. Would
Yes,
you
sir.
explain what you mean by that?
Sure. With regard to drug dealers, that's what I was referring to. If we get the federal agencies and we can prosecute them on the federal side, what that does is not only removes them from our community, it removes them from the Commonwealth altogether. If we can get them prosecuted on that side, it's a harsher, stricter system, generally speaking, and I think it would be more of a deterrent. If somebody knows that they're going to be housed somewhere within a few hundred miles of where their home is, they know that mom, dad, or girlfriend or boyfriend can come and visit them on a fairly regular basis. But if they have the potential of being housed in another state, in another time zone, that makes that much more difficult, and it becomes a very lonely process, and you're not with the people that you've associated with in the past. You know, unfortunately, and the sheriff could probably speak better to this, or Mr. Cherry, is that we have frequent flyers here within the city. We have guys that come within our jails that the deputies probably know on a first name basis. We have guys that come to jail here that the people at Hampton Roads Regional Jail know on a first name basis. You can ask a lot of the defense attorneys, the prosecutors, and the probation officers, you could say certain names, and they know those names because they've dealt with them for years. The catch and release program isn't really working for people like that. I think what we need to do is we need to step up our game and make it so that they either stay away or they fix themselves.
I think it was
Yeah, the gentleman in the back had a question
Yeah,
first.
Rob, go ahead.
I do. Mr. Wright, I'm Robert Marcus,
Good to meet you, sir.
and a lifelong resident of Portsmouth. I did not belong to this organization when Pat Simons was pressing for a grand jury investigation of the school board. I don't know how familiar you are with that situation, but the school board was flagrantly violating state law. And your former boss and my close friend, the Commonwealth's attorney, was unable to bring any criminal charges or even civil charges, I suppose, because no one actually, my understanding is no one lined their own pockets. But I would say to all of you sitting here that there was a direct cost in the city not having those funds available. The school board secreted from them, causing our tax rates to go up. And I have to tell you, that was a burden placed on everyone who resides here. So my question to you is, under your office, will everyone be treated the same? Or will we expect to see a blind eye turned to people who violate the law and there are no consequences for them?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer, of course I want to treat everybody the same. Unfortunately, the methods...
We did not have that in the past.
I understand,
And it rankles a lot of people who are in this room and some who are not.
I think also that's not a problem that's unique to the city of Portsmouth. I think everybody should be treated the same, but I don't think that, or excuse me, I don't think, I will not go outside the powers that are given to me as the Commonwealth's attorney in order to prosecute people. So if the purpose of the special grand jury is to do investigations of the like, and they give a report to the court to determine whether or not a true bill needs to be rendered, which means whether or not those people need to be indicted and criminal charges need to be brought. What the special grand jury seeks to do is define whether or not there's probable cause, and what that means in the basics of terms is that more likely than not a crime is committed, and more likely than not this person or this entity has committed that crime. And if they don't return a true bill and they don't determine probable cause, then we don't have the means in which to find them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So the short answer is absolutely everybody will treat it equally, but I'm not going to skirt the law in order to do that, and I'm not going to reinvent the law in order to treat everybody equally. I'm going to do what methods and manners are able to me. Now, to answer that specific instance, if there was an issue with regard to getting that money back, and it didn't rise to the level of a criminal act, the city attorney, by all means, could bring suit on behalf of the city in a civil manner. So, I mean, that's a great question. But
I'd like a follow-up if you don't mind.
Sure.
You're
I
gonna
got
get-
you.
You're gonna get it.
You're noted.
Because not only did the school board break the law, but with no consequences, they continued to break the law. So what kind of example is that setting for our city and for the people who live here and the people who do respect the law, that you can pretty much do anything you want? It's also understood that the Commonwealth's attorney holds great sway over what direction these special hearings are work.
It depends. It depends. So with regard to the special grand jury, if it's requested by like a regular grand jury, which convenes every month to investigate things a little bit further, then the Commonwealth's attorney is not a party to that unless requested to do so. If the Commonwealth's attorney is the one that convenes the special grand jury, they can be there to present evidence, but it is a fact-finding expedition, something that you have more than just an inkling that something wrong is going, that we're looking specifically towards a specific issue. So, again, it's a great question, but it ultimately, and I don't want to push things back or say that, this is the way that, this happened or that, because I'm not uniquely familiar with that specific instance, just to be candid. But that's where the citizens have power. If they're doing things and the consequences, they're not reelected. The consequence is if the grand jury is there, which is convened of citizens, the citizens are the ones that find that information, and then the Commonwealth is the one that takes that ball and runs with it. So.
Thank you for
We
indulging.
have one more question, and everyone, I apologize, we do have Captain Cherries in the back that probably gonna tie with a few, so if you would bear with us just for a few more minutes. Go ahead, Steve.
We've had an exchange over the school board issue.
Sure.
Tens of millions of dollars were illegally appropriated. The grand jury that was convened rather than having the state police come in and investigate this, which was unfortunate. Is a grand jury, are the proceedings in a grand jury sealed? Can the public access the transcript of the grand jury?
No.
So we do not know who was subpoenaed, we do not know who testified, and we do not know if any of them invoked their Fifth Amendment protection.
At the conclusion of the grand jury has a certain amount of days to submit a report to the court, and that report is sealed. So, in short, no. But, if you're being investigated by the grand jury, you're not entitled to be present. You're not entitled to have counsel there. You really have no voice with regard to that. But if you are subpoenaed as a witness for the grand jury, you can still have your right to counsel, so that if you do elect to plead the Fifth or you need legal advice of such, you can have that person present for that purpose.
Thank you. And again, you've already been called out. He will be coming back, Mr. Marcus, yes. By the way, this was very good. I hope you all appreciate this. Not only did you hear from a candidate, but you hear the internal workings of what happens in that department. And this is where we don't see. We see the publicized part. We see about it in the news. To hear somebody that, he did work in that office. He's an attorney right now. He's within our Portsmouth system. I think this is valuable information we learned today. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, good morning. If you ever wonder why oysters and clams won't share their food, it's because they're shellfish. Jennifer asked me to be relatively quick, so we ought to be out of here by noon. First of all, about the budget. This year, the city was good to us. They gave us the budget that we requested, but there was a complete difference in the way that they operated, in the way that they brought us in. We didn't go through all the problems we did in the past, and I reflect that on the leadership in the city. Our budget is around $12.5 million a year. Of that, about 60% of it is paid for by the state of Virginia. Sheriff's deputies are paid by the state compensation for what we are paid for by the state. So the city got a big chunk of that back in. And the only thing that we continue to get hurt on are supplements. We have the lowest supplemental rate for our deputies in any city in Hampton Roads, almost half of what they get in Chesapeake. And the supplement is a small amount of money, $2,400 or so, that's added to that state compensation rate that goes to the deputies. And the city just has a problem with it. It's really funny that when we go to the state, they go, "You're city employees." We go to the city, they go, "You're state employees." So we kind of get stuck in the middle. But the city worked with us really well. And so I really can't complain about that. And I think it was leadership. I think it's been a change in leadership. So that answers kind of your budget. I didn't want to get into detail. If you want to know where our budget is, we're listed under judicial, by the way. So if you want to see the sheriff's budget and breakdown, it's under judicial. Couple of things coming up. I'm following an attorney here, but there's been some news out. I am the lead investigator on the Whitaker case. I cannot discuss the case. I feel a little bit like Comey, Mark. I hope you're getting all this right. But let me tell you how we got into it real quick, because the story hasn't got out there. In October of 2015, a concerned citizen with an informant came to the sheriff's house on a Sunday afternoon. They gave the sheriff certain information. He called me. I was about ready to put a steak on the grill. He said, "Get over here." I went over to his house, met with the confidential informant. 3 meetings occurred after that. I got a lot of information and started working on the case. There was a thing in the paper about, does the sheriff's department have investigators? I am an LEO, a law enforcement officer. I'm a trained investigator, Chesapeake Police Academy, State Police Academy. I am currently a federal PREA investigator, taking various courses at that level. And I'm an expert teaching witness for the FBI grand jury. So I have the investigative skills. My partner, Brett Johnson, is an investigator, was a homicide investigator with Norfolk Police. Excellent investigator, a lot better than I am. And has been just huge in putting this case together. So we worked on the case. We went to the FBI. We had several meetings with the FBI, and we said, this is what we've got based on the information we have. The FBI said it's a prosecutable case. But you're familiar with the way they work. They went, the money doesn't raise to the level that we want. And we tried everything we could. We went to the state place because we knew this was going to be a political bombshell and somebody was going to try and turn it into that. So we went to the state police and said, "Hey, will you take the case? Here it is." They said, "Y'all have already investigated it. And you have the same authority we do." Most people don't realize that state troopers on their authority says they'll be empowered with the same authority of a sheriff. That's where they get the authority from, because we have state jurisdiction. They said, "You've already done it, you do it." So we're sitting there looking at this, going, where do we go from here? There's a fellow by the name of Thomas Kim. He's senior supervising agent, Washington, D.C., sits right outside of the White House, matter of fact, in the Treasury Building. That's what they do. Thomas Kim joined with us on the investigation. And what a great group of folks, and they do financial aid. So they're in the investigation with us. Brett and I have been working with them very closely. We did not charge anybody with anything. The NCUA, National Credit Union Administration, requested us to look into this. And they have worked very closely with us being ourselves in Treasury. We took all of the information we had, and I went to the Commonwealth attorney, Brett Johnson, and we sat down and said, this is what we have. That is a required route we had to go. Commonwealth attorney said it would be unethical, and I think illegal for me to take this case. I know these folks, and I'm too tied in, but here's what I'll do. You give me a probable cause investigative summary. I want to know who, what, when, why, and how, and your evidence, and I'll move it forward. We did. It was a 3-page summary. They moved it up to the judges. Special prosecutor was picked. A fellow by the name of Andy Robbins. You probably know Andy. Andy worked also for Earl Mobley, and he worked both at the federal level and the local level, and he's a bulldog. And he is out of Winchester, of Wright County, western part of the state. Then they have now gone and gotten a judge to sit on this because the 3 judges recused themselves as we expected. All of this had to be done through Judge Moore because he is the sitting judge. We requested a special grand jury. Now, what's the difference? And counsel, correct me if I'm wrong. Special grand jury has the ability to indict. A special grand jury has the right to request subpoenas. A special grand jury has the right to question witnesses and the investigators. So we went into the special grand jury. There were 9, 1 white, 8 black. They were selected, by the way, by Judge Moore. And we sat down before them and they questioned the Treasury agent. They questioned me. We had witnesses that came in and they questioned. They looked at all of the evidence that we had. And then our attorney, Mr. Robbins, said, here's the evidence. Here's what we think they did wrong. It's up to you. We're not indicting anybody. And we left. And in 45 minutes, they notified the judge that they had reached that decision. They came into that courtroom and they indicted on 18 felonies. The paper's wrong. They're 18 felonies, 2 misdemeanors. The reason for 2 misdemeanors is they had to do, in that particular case with identity theft, the law in the state of Virginia says it has to be 5 or more to get up to a felony. So you ended up with class 1 misdemeanors on those. That's where we are right now. The investigation is continuing, and we will go to court Monday. And that's why I brought this up, so you know what's going on. One of the things in a special grand jury, as soon as we got through, every document in that room is put in a box, sealed in the court, right there in front of the judge, not to be opened. They are requesting the investigator's notes, which would be Thomas Kim's notes and my notes. And under the law, the defense really shouldn't get those. It's kind of a work product, but they're coming in to request that they get them. There is an additional request that has to do with the court date. The court date originally was set for July 26th. They went back and said, hey, it was settled for November. That is not true. The court date will be argued this coming Monday, and I'm sure there'll be other points that their defense attorney will bring up. So that's what we're waiting on Monday, and so you'll be hearing that. The only thing I can tell you is, in defense of what we did, the sheriff had no choice but to look at hard evidence that was given him. He has had no hands in this. He has not said to me, do this or do that. He said, if there's a case, carry it to the proper authorities and make it. And if it's not, leave it alone. I went to him and I said, we have a case and I'm trying to do this. He said to pursue it. So all this stuff about it's political, that's, folks, simply not true. I look forward, as a law enforcement officer, I gotta tell you, I don't care. I'm gonna go into that court, I'm gonna do my job, I'm gonna walk out, and I don't care. It's up to the court. There's no personal vendetta here, so I look forward to the case coming to open court, to a jury of his peers hearing the case, and letting them make the decision as to guilt and innocence, and that's the way it should work. Right now, he's been accused. It does not mean that Dr. Whitaker is guilty of anything. Time will tell.
Question, yeah, I hope you're done. Is it, correct me if I'm mistaken, but you're sworn in to serve the public? All law enforcement, including attorneys?
Correct.
So when you are presented with information that you're looking at, you have a choice. I mean, and you suspect this. You either do what's right and you hand it in, you turn it over, or you forget about it, which I think we're all watching nationally what's going on.
It's kind of unique.
So, I have to say this, by the sheriff turning over information, I expect that to happen. It's not that he's looking out. if he turned information over in one of us, do your job. So if any backlash came at all, our sheriff did his job. He
Yes.
moved it forward. I don't care who the person was.
50 years ago this month, they hung a Chesapeake police badge on my chest, proudest day of my life. And then I got back into private business, and almost 15 years ago, I hung this one back up there. I took an oath, and that oath is to uphold the law. And it doesn't make any difference whether I see somebody mugging somebody on the side of the road. I cannot drive past that. But if I see something like this, I have to do something with it. But what the law says is I have to do it correctly. I should do it without malice. And I should do it within the scope of the law. And that's exactly what we have done. And like I said, you know, and whenever that case is, I'll come back before you, and if the man is found innocent, I will say to you, that's what the jury found. That's what we have the system. So that'll be what's going on, but I just wanted to explain it because the newspaper is so busy selling papers that they would rather say, the sheriff's chasing the mayor, couldn't catch him, and he's chasing, so, you know, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Stay tuned, and please come to court when it happens. I think it's,
Any questions, you will be real quick, are we okay? Any new business coming before this committee? Having heard none, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Remember to come out and vote Tuesday.